Hey, how you going? It's Jai, that Aussie metal guy here with Crannk and with that metal station. And today I'm having a chat to Tim Pope from the Amenta. Extreme industrial black and death metal, noise, terror, whatever you want to put it, man. Great band, got all the albums, and a joy to have a chat to you, man. How you doing?
Yeah, really well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, cool. Used to be getting pretty excited with the album release coming up on February 19th. Revelator, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. It's been a long road. It's been 8 years or something of pretty constant work. So we're pretty keen to get it out there and get it done.
Yeah, well, I think it was 2013, which is Flesh Is Heir come out, and you guys have been pretty well working since then, on this one.
Yeah. We after that, we went into hiatus where we stopped playing for a while and all that sort of stuff, and people thought we broke up, but we were really burnt out at the end of that. We'd done a fair bit of touring, and we'd done these 3 albums over. Admittedly, we're not the most prolific band in the world, but we'd done these 3 albums and kind of got to the point where we were like, not all that inspired. If we go and write something new right away, it's going to sound exactly like the old stuff, and that would have been definitely boring for us, and probably boring for everyone else. So we decided to kind of disappear for a while, and the plan was kind of, if we feel like writing something and getting into a new album, then we'll do it. If not, no, I'm done. Rather leave it where it is and not release garbage, but come back if we get something inspired. So then we started, actually, Erik and I started writing for another project. But let's scrap the Amenta. We'll start writing for something else, which we've done before. I think we've done that in between every single album, and I now realise it's our trick to get ourselves to write again. But so we can write without any pressure. No sort of, it doesn't have to sound like anything. We just kind of write, made sort of ugly noise. And very early on in that, we went, maybe this is actually the Amenta album. Maybe we've gone the wrong way. We should actually focus on the thing we've built. So we made a couple of really small changes to the songs and made them a little bit more kind of us. And that was kind of the start of the album. And that was probably, so we stopped playing live in 2013. That was probably 2015 we made that decision. So since then, it's been pretty full tilt, kind of working on that.
Yeah, well, you would have needed that bit of downtime as well, though, because being you've got a fair bit of hype as well, and all over the world, and playing with some cool bands, and that would have been like really cool, but also would have been very tiring as well to walk away and go, look, we need a little bit of downtime. And I've actually talked to musicians in your position who have done that, gone away and played with a little different project in between, and come back just fully invigorated for the next album as well.
Yeah, it seems to work. It's the best trick, I think, because you keep moving and keep writing and keeping your end in, but you don't have to worry about anything else. So we were out of contract, and we didn't have to worry about what people would think about it. It was just going to be a completely new thing, and it allows you to kind of come up with new ideas, and then all of a sudden you can kind of see how they fit into what you used to do, and it became like the next step in what we do.
Yep. So about 2015, you're saying you're kind of like, okay, and then we're going to start working on this next album for the Amenta. Can you tell me a little bit about that process, kind of leading up, like your pre-production, kind of leading up to when you're going, oh, okay, now let's get in the studio, just the creative process, say?
We're kind of lucky, I guess. Lucky, and also it's a problem sometimes, but we all have our own studios. So the process of pre-production and recording is pretty fluid. So our process is always, we just go in and try and write the skeleton of a song as quickly as possible, which is usually it might be just a guitar and a drum machine, little bit of, synth stuff just to say this is where we'll have some ideas of things, maybe a little bit of bass, depending on what's kind of leading the idea. But we keep it really, really skeletal. So you just kind of knock out that idea and go, here is the basic idea of a song. And then over the next probably year or so, we spend a lot of time taking that skeleton and then reworking and trying to find the best way to arrange it. So a lot of it's, you've got these parts, you've got a verse and you've got a chorus and you might have a middle eight or something. How do you arrange them in the way to best show them off, and the structure that kind of makes the most sense for the song? So there's structural things, but while all that's happening, we're writing second guitar parts, we'll improvise some noise, we'll do some stuff which will suggest new directions. Then all of a sudden you go, hang on, this whole section doesn't work, we've got to fuck that off, we've got to write a new bit. So there's all that. So the whole process is a really... it's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but it works for us. We go in and just kind of tear everything apart, put it all back together, try different things. There's versions of the song. There's a song that actually ended up not being on the album, but we recorded. that was written, and it was a very guitar-based death metal song. And then at one stage it became almost like a trip-hop song based around a amplified typewriter percussion thing that we made. But then after that, it became this murky noise thing, which is the thing we ended up recording, which isn't on the album. But there's other things like that. So we completely changed the way certain songs were orchestrated, and you know, a guitar riff will be played by the bass or keyboard, and vice versa. You know, swap stuff around, just try and find the best way to present the ideas. So there's a lot of that fucking around that goes on. In the meantime, we're slowly getting all the sounds that are actually going to be on the album. And I think the last thing we did, so Dave actually recorded his drums first, which, you know, that's probably quite standard for other bands. But for us, for the album Non, for instance, everything else was recorded and the drums were recorded last. They were recorded to all the kind of noise and guitars and all that sort of stuff. This time, that was sitting there for a long time. And so we had his drums, which were kind of based around the structures we had. And then it was kind of building the songs around that. So it was kind of taking that as the spine and adding all this kind of other stuff to try and get it to the point where it felt like it was live and it was happening. So it was, yeah, it's a pretty ridiculous process.
Yeah, it seems like a ridiculous process, but like you said, you've all got your own studios, and probably some people don't realise he's scattered all over Australia. And you've got Erik, he's over in London, UK way, isn't he, as well? So it would make it a little bit easier having your own studios. You got Dave, he's down in, I think, Tassie, you're in Sydney. And then Cain, I think he's over in Perth, isn't he? Or something like that as well. So it would get quite, to try and get everyone into the studio at the same time, especially with the way the world's been the last year or whatever, it just wouldn't have been possible. And for the creative process to be like since 2015, it would have given you that time as well to kind of really dive into making this Amenta album, because it would be a tough process, but also a fun process making an album for you guys, because you don't get pegged into any particular, you know, you get that black and extreme death metal vibe, but it's a really cool, unique sound. I love the shit out of you guys, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. This one was probably, for me, it was the most fun I've had recording, because it was so free. There was no, if it never actually got out, it wasn't a problem. No one was kind of expecting an album. So we could just kind of do what we wanted. And if ideas didn't work, then that's fine, we tried it. But there's a lot of stuff on this album that were the ideas that worked that we wouldn't have done in the past. But because we kind of had this time and we had this sort of openness to experiment, there's all sorts of things on there that are just a little bit different and a little bit strange. So you would have heard Seer Money, which is the first single we released, which almost has like a rock sort of swagger to it. And that, you know, if we'd come up with that riff in 2004 when we were writing our first album, it would have been like, that's pretty cool, and we'll play it in a jam room, but we're not going to release it because, I don't know, it's not death metal. But now it's kind of like, we don't give a shit. If we like it, it's kind of, as far as we're concerned, if we like it, the chances are other people probably will too. But it's kind of, we're not here to make a death metal album or a black metal album. We're here to make the Amenta album, and anything that we come up with and collectively like, and it feels like it's not interrupting the vibe of the album, then it's correct. So it all kind of works. So for us, it doesn't matter what the genre is or how we come about a sound. All that matters is we're creating this kind of, this one piece of an artwork, and anything that kind of goes towards making that artwork interesting and exciting is completely valid.
Yeah, and you're bringing the fans along with you as well, and I think everyone who's followed the Amenta's work is going to realise that not each album is going to be the same as the next. And you can listen to bands and they bring out 10 albums of the same thing or whatever, and that's great for them, but I like bands like you as well that I can go, okay, then each album I'm going to get, they're experimenting, they're doing something different with the musical voicings, the compositions, the arrangements, the layouts and everything. And just with the singles I've caught, with Seer Money being the first one, we had An Epoch, Ellipsis and Parasite Lost with the first 3 singles, man. It blew me away. I'm just totally looking forward to it as well. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit, though, about, we talked about Seer Money, can you tell me a little bit about the next single there, An Epocalypsis? And I think it had an additional lead guitar by Joe as well.
Yeah, that was sort of something that we had the song, and the lead line was basically written as like it was just a melody that we had kind of stuck on the end. And that original part of that song actually went for probably twice as long. There was this whole other riff in the middle, and these guitars are kind of interlocked. But as we were kind of writing and part of that rearrangement process, we went, okay, that's probably a little bit too much. It's a little bit, you got to kind of you got to say what you got to say as quickly as possible. You don't let it go too far. But we did that. The lead line was there, and Erik's a really, really good guitar player. But there's something that Joe does in particular. He has that really fluid style, and we kind of could hear that in our heads, and thought that would be cool. Joe's been a good friend of the band for many, many years. He was our live guitar player for a long time right at the start. Yeah. So he's kind of, and obviously he's Dave's brother. So he's been, part of what we would call the extended Amenta family. And we like bringing those things into the album. So in the past, we've had, on the Void EP, we had our original vocalist, Mark, come in and sing some stuff. And our live bass player, Dale, he played on the actual song Void. We like bringing in different parts of the Amenta into it and kind of just having it all together in one whole. So it was a kind of a cool opportunity for us to use Joe for obviously what he's extremely good at, lift the song completely, because he took that melody line and he reinterpreted it and he added all these harmonies in typical Joe fashion. It's fucking brilliant. And so he chucked that on and it really, really lifted the song. It was incredible. So, it's a cool thing to have.
Yeah, that's down at the, I've got to mention their studio as well. It's AAA Recordings, isn't it, down there in Hobart?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been handy as well. Dave would have been there, and Joe. It's good having them boys on board. Such a great musician, Dave, as well, too. The drumming he does on this is just extreme. Like, all the drumming he does is really cool, and he can just kind of bounce off into each act. As you were talking about the flags, I've got the Abramel and the PSYCROPTIC ones back there, and the new stuff they're working on there. It must be cool too, playing with them guys as well.
Yeah, it's always great. Dave is one of those drummers, and we're lucky in that the two drummers that we've kind of played with mostly, Dave and Robin Stone, they're both kind of phenomenal drummers, and they both can do that kind of hyper fast, ridiculous technical drumming that is nowadays kind of like the baseline standard of this is what you've got to have to be a death metal band. Those guys kind of were the kings of that stuff. Both of them, and Dave in particular on this album, what I like to see is they've over time they've grown so much with their instrument. They can do that stuff, but I think very similar to how we look at music, they don't necessarily do it just to do it. So if a song doesn't need them playing hyper fast, then they don't do it. They're just as happy playing grooves and things like that. And Dave on this album, and we first heard it on some of the Ruin stuff, and it was like that's cool. Yeah, that kind of groove thing. Ruins have that slightly more rock and roll opening, and we kind of filed it away in the back of our minds. But our stuff was still pretty intense back then. But I think hearing this, and Dave just he heard what we were doing and just brought this amazing kind of feel-based stuff to it. So there's still the blast, there's still the double kick and all that sort of stuff, but he's just allowed the songs to breathe, and he's really opened them up and found grooves, and it's a really cool thing to play with guys who I think are at the top of their game.
Oh, you all are. It's unreal, man. I look forward to where this goes when you can eventually play again. Can you tell us a little bit about the last single that was released, the Parasite Lost, off the album as well?
Yeah, that one was that's actually one of my favorites from the album, because based around the start of it, that first verse thing was, we came up with this idea of just this drum beat, this like one repeated drum beat that was going to be almost like a post-punk thing, like have the bass kind of locked into it and have the rhythm section really strong in this section, and then everything else happened around it is kind of like, can be kind of amorphous and a little bit ambient, but you have this militaristic rhythm section. And so that was kind of the start of that thing. And I really dig the drum beat and the way that the actual time signature kind of moves and changes. So you've got this kind of thing that feels like it's in 3/4, but then it's got this little tail which changes the time signature. It's all very kind of, it's all fucking musical. But I think it's got a really good groove, and then it breaks into like a proper fucking metal guitar. And then by the end, you've got this whole sort of ambient epic section. It's got distorted violin, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a real encapsulation of all the different sounds on the album, which is cool.
Yeah, cool. And it's signed with EVB Recordings, is it, for this one? Yeah, it seems to have a really good push to it at the moment. Like, it's really getting out there. I noticed like media all over the place have been like frothing at the bit almost to this album to drop as well, which has been really good to see, because I'm a keen supporter of the Aussie metal scene. I love seeing bands like you just repping it and holding it down for the rest of the world to go, look, this is what we're rocking here. We can keep it with the best of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're really happy. We're working with Debemur Morti internationally and EVP here in Australia.
Okay.
EVP did Is Heir as well. They did it here in Australia, so we know how they work, and they obviously had great success in that time with Behemoth and PSYCROPTIC and all that sort of stuff. So they're doing really, really well. And DMP have got Debemur and Morti have got awesome bands on their label, a lot of like really sort of strange black metal and things like that. So I think the pairing of those two labels is working really well for us. It's cool that you're seeing the excitement. We had no idea, you know, being so long out of it. I think if we'd come out of an album directly out of Is Heir, it probably would have been right. We knew where we were, but so much has changed in that time. You know, magazines that we used to, or the, you know, webzines that we used to read, half of them are gone. You know, we have no idea what it's like. So coming in now, and for people to actually care and to be really into it is exciting, and it's cool. You know, we're really glad that people are picking up on it. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's a weird time, and I'm going to go on, and people who watch a lot of my interviews are going to go, oh, here he goes on the support thing. But for me, I love buying records, and for places like, for albums like this, you go along and buy records or you buy merch. I'm always been a big supporter of buying merch, not just going over and, oh, I can't like and subscribe on Spotify and I'll support the band. In my opinion, that's not even really doing fuck all for the bands, to be quite honest. Where's the best place people can get along and support you guys with this album? Because it's a ripping album, and you've got some ripping merch. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. There's some great stuff. We've got some great shirts, which is nice. We've not had all that many shirts in the past, and this time we've got fucking heaps, so that's cool. But you can pre-order new merch and the albums. There's exclusive vinyl and digipacks and shit. There's a couple of places. There's in Australia, there's Nerve Gas and Direct Merch, which is Dave's company. Those guys are doing pre-orders of our album, and then also Bandcamp is always a really good place to support bands. And then Debemur Morti has got they've got a European and a US store as well, so it's in a fair few places, so you can always find a version to pre-order.
And I'll put all the links in there as well when I publish this piece up on the YouTube and the webzine. It must be a weird time, as you're saying, with the webzines and everything changing. It just goes so fucking quick. Like, you'll try and keep up with it too as well. So, nah, man, this has been an absolute pleasure. Last word, shout outs, thank yous. I'm not even going to ask about touring because fucking who knows. Australia, we'll ask actually. You've got anything planned for tour wise, Australia? Because I did want to ask about this because I know international, like, people are going, oh, you know, we may not get internationals here in 2021.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of a good thing too, because people can get along and really support the Australian music scene and the live scene, especially after 2020. It comes back to what I'm talking about, support. Get along to gigs early, buying tickets early, and then go along to the merch stand and buying merch as well and help and support this scene.
Yeah, I think that's going to be... I definitely think that's going to happen. I think the local scene's going to benefit from the fact that that's going to be all there is. We haven't got anything booked yet, but we're open to it. So we had a talk about it, and before Perth have just had their new lockdown and there's border closures and all that sort of stuff, which is slowly opening up. But every time we kind of suggest, hey, maybe we should do this, we have a kind of date in mind, shit goes. So we're now, luckily, most of us now are in the country. So Erik actually moved from London back to, he's now living in Adelaide.
Okay.
So he's at least in the country. And then we've got, we're all spread out, as you said, in completely different states. Our bass player still lives in LA, so I don't know how that's going to go. But at least we sort of can get together, most of us in Australia. So once we can get through the borders and we're reasonably certain that not only can we go on tour, we'll be able to get home, we'll definitely look to book stuff. We'd love to do some decent shows in Australia, and I think you're right. It's going to be, the local shows are going to go off now because that's all there is going to be. And we love playing here. This is where we can actually do our proper show. We've got our lighting guys, we've got our whole production that we can do. Whereas, you go over to Europe and you're basically traveling with a guitar and that's about it. Yeah. This time we can do it properly. So we're really looking forward to getting out there and smashing it out.
Yeah, and you talk about doing it properly as well. Those are the unsung people that have lost out too. Besides the musicians, there's the whole crew you're talking behind. So you must also be thinking it'd be cool to kind of get these guys and do a little bit of work as well, get back on the road. So it'll be really good to see, Tim. This has been an absolute pleasure, man. Any last words, shout outs or thank yous you'd like to add in there, mate? Oh,
thank you for the interview, and thank you for everyone who's watching, and check out the album. It's a fucking ball terror.
It is. It's an absolute ball terror. Revelator comes out February 19th. Everyone grab it, pre-order. I'll put the links in there. When you get this, you're going to want to put it in the stereo, turn it up really loud for the neighbours because they're definitely going to want to hear this one. Cheers, Tim.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, man.
Done.